Hey guys, welcome back to the latest episode of the Growing a Dental Practice podcast. I am your host, Mike Hennon from Patient Boost. In today's episode, I'm joined by Philip Molden, Operations Director of Working Feedback. Working Feedback helps dental practices automatically collect patient feedback and Google reviews. Welcome to the show, Phil. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Hello, Mike. Yeah, really well, thank you. There's always plenty going on.
Yeah, definitely. And it's great to have you on the show. I've known you for a few months now. Lucky had the pleasure of meeting you in person. Was it the BDIA back in March? Is that it?
Yes, it was the exhibition in Birmingham. Yes, that's right.
One of the big events of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yeah, dressed as a national, exactly.
So luckily, it wasn't in July.
Yeah, although March was very hot.
Well, I can imagine any time in a spacesuit.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're in outer space, where it's pretty cold. Anyway, that's enough. Yeah, I could not imagine if anyone asked me to do it in this, in the summer, I'd be like, no way, Jose. So I've obviously touched on the fact that you, help dental practices with their feedback and their Google reviews. Before we talk more specifically about that, and obviously what working feedback can do for dental practices, tell me a bit more about you, Phil, and what's your background?
Yeah, well, I was very lucky in my early career because I used to work in the music industry. And it's a business called PRS, which is the Performing Rights Society. And they're the people that collect the royalties for songwriters and publishers. So it was a very different environment when I first started my early career. I was there for a while, but I ended up specializing with PR and events. So I got to meet a lot of my musical heroes through the events that we're involved in. So it just was a really interesting, when I was younger, it was just a great intro to business in terms of that. So that's my early career.
Before we go any further, Phil, you've got a name drop.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the thing with the songwriters particularly is that you don't necessarily nowadays it's people like Ed Sheeran and stuff is songwriters and performers, but a lot of the songwriters previously just used to write songs. They didn't necessarily want performers. But my particular heroes at the time was, for example, I used to organise something called the John Lennon Awards, and this was fortunately after his death. But George Martin, who was a Beatles producer, used to present the awards for me. And so I got to meet him, and just amazing, just massive hero. And saying that, we also I got to meet Paul McCartney a few times as well, because he'd come along to PRS and various other events. So they're the big ones. But what was also, and again, just looking back on it, it's just like really privileged at the time because my love of music. But we used to organize something called the Ivor Novello Awards, which is a songwriting awards thing. So you're glad rag with Sting, Van Morrison, Gary Barlow, Peter Gabriel. It was just surreal in terms of that. So yeah, it was a special time in terms of my.
That's awesome, man. Have you ever dabbled with songwriting and performing music?
In terms of performing, I dabble with the guitar, but that's it. I'm really, really good at listening to music. I'm great at that.
I love that.
An expert.
Fantastic. So it was a crush. Yeah.
It's otherwise
that's the limited range.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. I'm always I have that idea that I want to write a song at some stage. But yeah. No, there's a few more things, and that would be an added bonus in terms of that. But no, it was a great start. But I mean, saying that, from PRS, I then went into the legal sector, which was a huge jump in terms of that, because I got involved more in marketing, and I started to work for some city law firms in London. So I was doing business development and marketing, which kind of set me in a good stead for kind of where we are at the moment in terms of what we do.
Fantastic. So when did you, at what point did you start working feedback, or what was the why did you start working feedback? Because that's music to law to patient reviews or customer reviews. That's a big jump. What was the trigger?
Yeah, it's quite diverse, isn't it? Well, the trigger was my business partner John. It was something that he actually came up with as an idea, and we built it from scratch in 2006, which seems like an eternity. Well, it is an eternity ago. We were already friends, good friends, because we met originally when we were studying marketing together. So we were doing our diplomas in marketing and at college, and we just met each other and just got on. And from there, we just stayed in touch, etc. Now, his idea originally was about creating something that back in that time, some people listening will remember, but Yellow Pages used to be massive. That was prior to kind of main broadband and internet. Any business just used to literally advertise on Yellow Pages. So his idea originally was to build like an online business directory, but use customer word of mouth to help businesses stand out. And because businesses weren't used to that, it was just literally using Yellow Pages for advertising, and the amount of money they used to spend on that. It was a really creative thing to do because the internet was just coming in. And it's pretty groundbreaking what we were doing. This was kind of early. The only people that were using feedback publicly to any extent was people like eBay. Amazon hadn't even started to use it properly then. So it came up with that, and that's how it got started. But that was back in 2006, and at the time it was great because the internet just exploded, so everything started to go online. So it's a really good platform in terms of what we wanted to do. So that it kind of evolved, and we kept evolving what we originally started, because it wasn't originally started called Working Feedback. It was something called the Disk Directory, which covered all businesses. So then back in 2012, we focused more on the healthcare sector, because we just saw a relevance in terms of how important feedback was, and hence patient feedback. And here we are. So 2012, Working Feedback, and for the past several years we've been focusing very much on dentists. And we're very much up and running. And incidentally, John and I are still really good friends.
Good. So you've obviously had ups and downs, and you've come through it. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of dental practices listening. Well, just the COVID has been so immense just over the past few years. But yeah, I mean, because it's been going a while, there's the usual challenges. Starting something from scratch, from the intellectual property side of things through to the creative side for the marketing, actually starting a business, the cash flow element of it all, it's just so important in terms of that. So yeah, and I think in between that there was I think there was a recession sometime in 2008, I think it was 2007.
You think there was?
Well, it's a long time ago. So just to throw it in the mix, it was just one of those things, just one of those hurdles you had to get over at the time. That was it.
Yeah. Fantastic. How long, from a personal perspective, how long did you know John before you decided to go into business together?
It would have been probably about 10 years before that, if not a little bit more.
Do you think that helped? Do you think that's helped the business? Because some people go into business without ever really knowing the person or very well, but they just go straight into it, and that seems like it could be cause issues down the line.
Yeah, I think it was a big bonus that firstly we were good mates, so we knew each other, and we had respective strengths in terms of that. I mean, John's background when he was working was within sales and kind of training, so he had a good side of that, and the training on the kind of the technology side of stuff as well. And my strengths that were coming in were kind of marketing and PR. So together it was quite on the face of it anyway, it was a very strong team in terms of that. But because we did know each other, we had that confidence in terms of, we didn't need to second guess anything. And of course, I would imagine that the difficulty of starting a business with somebody you don't know is that, of course, you have to find each other out first of all. So yeah, for us, it was important because we got on well. And we had a lot of ideas to throw at each other that we would listen to, as opposed to, because we knew each other, as opposed to just going off on one particular direction.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I think that's what's been a success for us, me and Sheila, is that we knew each other before.
Yeah.
And so we 2.5, maybe nearly 3 years.
Okay. Yeah.
So obviously not quite the 10, but enough time to really know each other. We we never had intentions of being business partners, but so we were very open with each other. You know what it's like. You have days where you're like, why am I doing this? I'm just going to pack it up and get a job or whatever. And you're like, the other one's like, no, don't do it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. that is a really good point, because again, just thinking about it, and it still goes on now, to be honest, it's that motivation, because when one of you is down, the other one is generally up. So it's always a case of you're always pushing each other, and from a motivational point of view, it's just great. If you are having a bad day, or something isn't quite working out as you want it to go, often somebody that you're close to, whether friend and a business partner, they G you up, and often you have a different perspective. They can throw a different perspective on it, because the important thing also is we're quite different characters, and that sometimes is not good, but for us, it works extremely well. So we look at things from take things different approaches. So it does work well.
Yeah, I think it's something for practice owners to consider, or people that can think about starting a practice. Is a lot of people do it on their own, but do explore the option of maybe starting with someone, because takes the almost half the burden almost immediately. Like, it just spreads spreads the stress, and it's not for everyone. And obviously make sure you find the right partner, and there's a good chance that you might not, down the line, it might not be the right thing, and you have to sort it out another way.
Yeah, but I've definitely the other important thing there is, as you say, if you're, as a dental practice, if you're the starting the practice yourself, that the family and friends support, the network of that is also really good. I'm not suggesting that obviously you get an opinion from everybody, because that's a recipe for disaster.
Dangerous.
but as far as getting that support, for example, from my wife, because when you're starting a new business, it's tough. And especially if you don't have, if you're starting from a fairly low, you're not getting funding or anything, you're self-funding. Even if you are getting a loan, it's so difficult, so challenging. And sometimes you do feel as though, you've got all the weight of the world on your shoulders. But when you have that support network, whether it's, a partner or whoever it may be, they can be very helpful as well. Because again, they're there to support you. And ultimately it's about, you having to succeed in that and getting started, and just approaching each thing and, getting over it as you can. Yeah.
Absolutely, then. That's awesome. So before we go any further, I just want to take a little step back, because I'd completely kind of forgotten about the disk directory.
Oh yeah.
So obviously that was your attempt. That was the plan.
Actually.
But I guess that was your plan, to take the yellow pages, I guess at the time, put it on a disc. Is that right? So it increased reduce the printing costs, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very much that. And I mean, I took back in 2006, or in fact, when we were developing it, broadband wasn't, as it is now. So it was quite difficult. Remember the connections were quite difficult. So our idea was, we would put it onto a disc, and this disc was the shape of a credit card. Incidentally, this disc had been invented by SAS, or that shape of disc, because they couldn't, shows how bad technology was then, or out of date it was, because they couldn't carry around traditional CD-ROM. We created it, and they created that on this credit card sized disc. So, it was odd looking, or it was quite novel actually, because we put it in a little blister pack. But the beauty of it is that it contained it within the disc. So if you didn't have a connection, you'd put it into your PC, and it would take all the data from the disk for your local area on the directory. However, if you did have a connection, it would automatically just sync through and connect online and expand to have more data on it. So it was, at the time, it was really clever. And the idea was, with the Yellow Pages connection, was that Yellow Pages used to be a massive book that would literally get left on your doorstep. And often, people would discover it after a week or so, and then, oh, well, there you go, and then probably put it in the bin. But we were quite canny in the sense that this little disc we put into a blister pack, and we put through people's envelopes, through their letterboxes, sorry. And it meant that, it would land on there, and potentially they would they would use it. So yeah, that happened. And then a few years later, Yellow Pages, I don't know if you remember, but they reduced the size of it, and it fit through letterboxes. So it's funny how it goes.
Oh, yeah. Handy. Yeah. That's convenient. So what was the moment that sort of caused you to pivot and say, right, this isn't working. We're going to streamline. We're going to streamline into just reviews. Like, what was that? Take me through that process.
Yeah, of course. It was, well, it was the pivotal part really, because as online got stronger and stronger, and more businesses were doing, literally going online and having everything done online. But also there was a proliferation of directories. Everybody was creating a directory for everything. And all of a sudden, the kind of what we had initially was losing its impact. People started to view directories as, not in the same strength, because there were so many. They were just literally stumbling over them. So they didn't have the same importance. So we kind of, looked at it and we decided, well, what's important here? It's not necessarily about the directory itself. What is important is the individual business that has the reviews, has the feedback. That's what needs to stand out. So that's when we came up with the idea of the working feedback, which meant that they had the ability to use the solution of working feedback, but without the necessity for a directory. So that's when we turned it around and created working feedback, which is specific to the business as opposed to integral to anything else. So yeah, that was a turning point in terms of that. And as I say, it's made a huge difference, because it's also, when we started the disc, it was literally available to any business, within a location. But now it's helped us hone in on working feedback is specific, and we are kind of the UK's leading feedback for the dentistry industry. So it's helped us really create a niche.
Fantastic. So that was a good pivot.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and of course, I mean, that's the other element. As far as helping dental practices and somebody starting a business like that, is that, don't be afraid sometimes that you've got to look at things and how they're being done, and evolving something is not necessarily a bad thing. You have to move and look at what's happening in terms of, things around you, and it's important that sometimes you do have to look at evolution in terms of making sure that you can adapt for something that is changing around you.
Absolutely, because when you start a business, it's just a collection of assumptions, isn't it? And you have no real idea if it's going to work or not, and you've got to change, or you are going to fail.
Oh, absolutely, and that's one of the other things about starting your business. You are so focused, and you are so just in that zone to make sure that it's working. So you are very focused on a particular business, and sometimes these things coming in from the side you don't necessarily take them in, because you're focused to just on getting on what you originally planned to do. So it is an important element of it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So let's just jump back to the sort of feedback and reviews. So obviously, why is feedback great for a business, and specifically dental practices, like just having feedback from patients?
Yeah, well, I mean, the most important thing about the feedback itself is that, I mean, just taking reviews as such, everybody looks at reviews now. It's the first point of contact. It's the first impressions in terms of that. So reviews are important because it just helps somebody stand out online, for example, which is often where people will go first. But also, as far as feedback is concerned, it helps the business. It helps them grow. You can't learn anything if you don't understand what your customers think about your service. It's important that you're able to identify that and to be able to react, because that's the other element. Rather, something from honest feedback from patients actually using your service, rather than just literally blindly going on and doing what you normally do. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think business owners that are sort of closed-minded and don't take feedback on, I just feel like they're going to struggle. You really need to be open-minded, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think the other elements of that, and of course, it's inevitable in the conversation when you're talking about feedback, is Google reviews. And why they're so important for practices, and it's something that is obviously we're asked a lot in terms of Google reviews. And one of the things with Google reviews, and first and foremost, it's what's important. It's the Google search engine. That's what matters. That's what makes Google reviews so important, because everybody Googles something. It's that dominance that Google has. So anything found on Google, whether it be Google reviews or other things, are important because you'll stand out on Google. But the thing with Google reviews is they're challenging, and as practices will know, it's lovely to get them, but goodness me, they can be difficult to get, certainly consistently. And what's made them so important as well is the fact that practices will often look at their competitors around them and see that they have Google reviews. And if they haven't, they just want to get there and get on board with the Google review. So it's one of these things, it's if they often see that with competitors, they'll do the same thing. But again, just harping back to the the importance of Google as a search engine is that it's that first impression. So if you've got a potential patient looking for a good dental practice and they're searching online, your profile is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we, reviews, not just for practices, but everything. If we're choosing a restaurant, then the number of reviews they've got either on, Google or like TripAdvisor, those things really important to us. If they're so important, why do some practices struggle to collect them? Like, what could be some of the stumbling blocks or the hurdles?
Yeah, I think. Again, clinicians and practice managers and their teams are great at what they do, which is provide great healthcare. That's what they're experts at. But the review process actually is quite challenging. It's not anybody can ask for feedback. Literally, it's not a difficult thing to do. You can ask for it, but practices know how difficult it is to get that, because a patient will say, "Yeah, I'd love to say something good about you. Send me a link," or whatever the potential process is. But inevitably, if it's not followed up and anything like that, it just won't happen. So it is very difficult, and it is a process. It's not just about simply giving them a link and they'll do it. You have a number of things in place that you have to follow in order that it's consistent. And what I know from experience in terms of what we do is that patients love to shout about their dental practices. They're smiling because they've just had, whether it's Invisalign treatment or whatever it is, they love it. They want to shout about it, and that's where the original word of mouth came in with what we wanted to do originally. But often what they don't have is the ability to do it. So it's just so difficult sometimes for practices. As I say, they're busy on what they're doing best, and the review process isn't a simple one-dimensional thing. It involves a number of different steps.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So let's focus on that then. So how does something like working feedback, how does it make it easier for dental practices to collect the feedback and obviously the reviews?
Yes, well, working feedback is a ready-made solution first and foremost, and with the integrations that we have, it can literally be automated to ask for reviews. So it takes that element of a PM, a practice manager, whoever needs to do that as part of their role, out of the equation, because it's all taken care of. I mean, quite literally, when it's integrated through Software of Excellence or Dentally, it sends out a request automatically by email or text. I mean, how easy is that? It's tailored to the practice. So they have their logo, and they can even change the questions, whatever they want to do. So patients, when they see that, have confidence in it. They will see that it's from the practice, they know what it's for, and they respond. And where it comes in with working feedback, because it is a ready-made solution, is that we then take care of that whole process. So so the practice team are left to do what they do best.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's key, isn't it? That's the key, I guess, selling point for a practice is, that reviews are important. It's going to help you grow the practice, but your team are so busy delivering the care, adding an extra, trying to phone up a patient multiple times asking for feedback. That's just not going to happen, is it? Like, it's going to just fall by the wayside. Yeah, so this is a great way to kind of streamline it. Automation, isn't it? It's the key, isn't it? Automate an important process.
Yeah, completely. And patient care, if we try and define that, from 5 years ago, patient care has just expanded greatly. So, patient care is not just from the treatment and the visit itself, it's what happens afterwards. And that includes things like feedback now. So it's such a wide role and the automation element, anything that can save time for the teams is a huge time and hassle is a huge bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another key feature of working feedback is, if you send a text, can't you? The text reminder. It's so important these days. People are on their phones more than they are on laptops or tablets. So, getting people where they are, key.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so important to make sure, because it's not as simple literally as what a lot of practices do. Is they would either hand them a tablet or something like that and say, can you leave us feedback? And with the best will in the world, patients don't like to, when they've had a treatment or whatever they've had that experience of, we have, as you say, with a mobile phone or whatever, there are so many different ways of doing it, and timing is key. You literally don't want to catch them as they're just leaving your dental practice. So you've got to give them some time and some consideration in terms of doing that. So the fact that mobile mobile responses are huge, and also what makes it even easier with our system is we also capture the Google reviews as well. So it makes the whole process of a dental practice wanting to get these reviews, making it so easy. Whether it's that, we've even got things like QR codes, so we make it easy, just whether it's email, whether it's SMS, but there's also a dedicated QR code for the practice to use, and that's becoming a very popular thing, certainly with with the use of smartphones.
Yeah, brilliant. So that's going to lead me into my next question, is like, what else can a practice do to encourage reviews? Now, I know practices that will use QR codes. Like, where can they, what can they do, where can they place them? Like, what's a good route with that, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, QR codes, obviously they need to be visible. So, I mean, the starting point is, as a guide, within the solution we provide, we automatically create QR code stands for the practices, and we'll send them a couple of those. And our recommendation is firstly, put them in reception, so it's at the point of initial contact. So when the patient is finishing up with their treatment or with their visit, so they can see it there. I mean, alternatively, some of the treatment rooms may be ideal for that. But what's starting to happen is that also the QR code is being replicated onto whether it's appointment cards or whether it's some of the other marketing collateral that the practice uses, so that it's becoming integral within all of the communications that they're having with patients. But don't forget, even things with like emails, etc., and with other things that may be sent out. It's easy. It's no different to dropping in a logo as an image. So it becomes very easy in terms of that. And most people, people are so familiar with QR codes because of with the NHS QR code that everybody had to use. So yeah, it's an everyday thing now.
Yeah, absolutely, perfect. And other than asking for reviews, what should practices do with the reviews once they've got them? Like, how can they utilize that to kind of grow the practice or attract new patients?
Yeah, I mean, that is a really good question. It's probably one of the most important part of reviews and feedback, because a lot of practices think that just getting reviews is job done. It's not that simple, because what's the point of having reviews and feedback if nobody can see it? If it's not going to help you attract more patients. So it's things like including within your website. It's important that the reviews are kept up to date on your website. Many practices listening to this will probably have a worried feel about the fact that their website, and you look at the testimonials page, for example, and it was probably, they were added when the site was built. And that's just ineffective, because obviously it's static. It has no benefit whatsoever. So dynamic reviews, and what I mean by that is that the content is updated automatically, so you don't have to keep going back to your website to do it. The other part as well, which is becoming more and more important, is the social media side of stuff, because Instagram particularly huge within dental practice. Facebook not so much, but it's still an integral part of social media. But Insta is important as well, so getting the reviews onto there. And again, our solution is built in, so it can share. You can share easily any feedback, any reviews that you get by doing that. And another part as well with using reviews is, and sometimes it's overlooked, is use it within your team. Often when I'm talking to practices, you talk to some of the front of house team, and they can have a tough day. If there's a few things that don't go quite as well as they should, patients may be, just having a little niggle at certain things. So sometimes they don't get to see the good things. And often with reviews, the vast majority of reviews that we're capturing are hugely positive, and they comment on particular members of the team, particularly reception teams, etc. But it's so important to share this feedback and reviews with the team, because not only is it good for staff morale, but it helps with so many things like recruitment and everything else. It's just where there's everybody has a good understanding of just the great things that the whole of the practice is doing. It helps leaps and bounds.
Yeah, absolutely. I literally had a call this morning with a dental practice, and we actually were going through their Google reviews, like just through the Google My Business listing, and like they just weren't aware of like how many reviews they had, like how positive they were, and it did put a smile on their face. So I was like, oh, they need to see these more often. Because typically if they come through Google, if they're not using something like working feedback, the reviews will come through Google, and only the person, the admin of that account will see them. And it's not the people in the practice aren't going to be Googling their practice every day to see what's going on.
No, that's right.
So I think that's a really good point. If you could share that with it internally within the team, real big morale booster. And why wouldn't you shout about how great you think your patients are?
Absolutely. And the important thing about feedback as well is it, going back to the element of kind of historical reviews that just don't serve any purpose at all, is that it's fresh content. And what I mean by that is that literally it's like we update our dental practice every month with a report of all of the activity for that previous month. So from one month to the next, they're always getting new comments, and there's a different slant on certain feedbacks. If you've got new members of the team coming in, they're getting comments in terms of positive feedback and things like that. So it's ever changing in terms of that. So don't rely simply on sharing the odd review here and then. It's a totally holistic approach in terms of making sure that Google, Facebook, the working feedback element of it as well is all included, because it's all so important. And do you know what? Teams really do like being involved and being able to share that stuff.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Phil. Really good. So that kind of wraps up the bulk of the podcast. So something I'd love to ask you, and I ask everyone, is based on your experience of dealing with dental practices, your own experience of running a business, if there are people listening that are thinking about buying or starting a practice, what is your number one piece of advice? Like, what is that one thing that you think they need to know?
Okay. Yeah. Well, from my perspective, obviously from a marketing element and having created a business, for a dental practice, it's so important to have a clear plan. How are you going to retain, if you're taking on an existing practice, how are you going to retain existing patients? And more importantly, attract new ones. You need to have a clear plan in terms of you're going to do that. And it's not just simply turning up for work every day. You need to have an understanding as to what you're going to do to stand out, to make sure that everybody knows about your particular practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. And obviously those plans can change, like as you learn more about it, but have some idea of the direction you're going in.
Yeah, it's like, absolutely, Mike. It's like everything else. It has to be measurable. There's no point in setting something in place and literally being so rigid that nothing will change. You need to have that plan, and obviously on a fairly regular basis. And I would say obviously within a fortnightly or monthly basis, you need to be able to assess that and measure it in terms of what's going on. And if it isn't, there's potential tweaks that you can put in place. But as long as it's measurable and you're seeing some kind of changes, you've got the ability to manage those changes, it will help you significantly.
Yeah, fantastic. Really good advice, Phil. Thank you very much for that. So finally, if someone is interested in learning more about working feedback and having a chat with you, how can they get in touch with you? Yes,
well, we'd love to have dental practices contacting us. Just Google search working feedback. And you'll come across our website. Alternatively, I mean, if you want to call us, it's a free phone number. It's 0800 043 2100.
Perfect. I will get that added to the show notes. So if you do want to get in touch with Phil, and it's definitely worth a conversation, please do so. And Phil, finally, thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed talking to you as always. And yeah, it's a great product.
Thanks, Mike. Pleasure talking to you too.